Let's talk about stock dividends. So the first thing I want to point out is this picture of no cash. And the reason I have this picture here is because a stock dividend is a dividend that is given to the shareholders that involves no cash. Instead, they are giving out stock. So here we have the given information, and down here we are going to prepare the journal entries. So a stock dividend is a distribution of shares of stock to stockholders, and let me explain why they might do this. So maybe the corporation wants to give dividends to their shareholders, but they don't necessarily have the cash to give out. So what they may do instead is issue stock dividends. On December 15th, Laura Corp declares a stock dividend of 5%. Now, you have learned that when you see a percent, it has to do with a dividend. Here, it has to do with the number of shares they will receive. So if you want to figure out how many number of shares the corporation is giving away, you would take that percent and multiply it by the number of shares that are issued. So that would be 0.05 times your 2 million. And that would equal 100,000 shares. So that is the first calculation that you need to learn, the number of shares. So you can see in the journal entries, that's the first part of the calculation, the stock dividend percent times your number of shares. So remember, this is the number of shares that you're going to be giving away. Then it says to be issued on January 10th to stockholders on record on December 31st. The market price of the stock on the date of declaration is $31 per share. This is more information. Common stock, $20 par, and 2 million shares have been issued. Okay, on this date of declaration, this is when we set up our liability. Okay, so this is on December 15th. We're going to debit stock dividends. This is similar to the account you had before called cash dividends, but now we call it stock dividends. So we're going to say the stock dividend, 2 million percent times the number of shares, which I have this backwards, but it doesn't matter when you multiply, times your market value, which is the amount that we're going to be giving out, which is $31. And that would be your debit. So we're going to have $3,100,000 to stock dividend. And then our other account is going to be called stock dividends distributable. Because we are only recording the liability today, and we will distribute these stock dividends at a later date. This time we're going to say 0.05 times 2 million times par value, which is $20. Which would equal $2 million. Now this account will become your common stock account, which I'll show you later, but it is always put on at par value. And then everything over our par value will go into paid-in capital in excess of par. So we can subtract to find out how much we are over our par value. And it would be 1,100,000. So notice this entry looks a lot like what we do when we issue stock, except, well, this is going to change to common stock, and this is paid-in capital in excess of par. So when we issue stock, we credit common stock and we credit paid-in capital in excess of par. So this part right here looks just like what we do when we issue stock. And that's because we did issue stock. We issued stock as a dividend. We took the stockholders that are already holding stock and we issued them additional stock. Now, when we issue this stock, we will not have 2 million shares issued, but we will actually have 2,100,000 shares issued. All right, I want you to look at what happens when on the date we distribute the stock. We're going to get rid of the stock dividends distributable and put it into common stock. So debit it to get rid of it, and then we will credit our new common stock. And now it goes into common stock. And now you can see why we put this on at par value up here, because it turns into stock, and we always put our common stock on at par value. So that took care of our stock dividends distributable. The paid in excess of par is already there. Now the next question is, what happens to stock dividends? Well, the same thing that happens to cash dividends happens to stock dividends. It gets close to retained earnings at the end of the period. So it reduces retained earnings because we have distributed some of our retained earnings, this time in the form of stock. That is how you do a stock dividend. Let me know if you have any questions.